Disney's Disability Access Service, or DAS, a system that Disneyland and Walt Disney World provides for disabled guests visiting their parks, has come under fire in recent months after having been reimagined in the summer of 2024 to restrict its access to a particular demographic of individuals that Disney has unilaterally decided and defined as disabled, and thus either worthy or not of being on the system itself. Disney stated they did this in order to crack down on what they viewed as abuse of the DAS system in response to a notable increase in DAS applications. At the same time, the company noted a decrease in sales of their Lightning Lane Skip the Line option. However, we've had our reservations about just how Disney went about implementing such a policy and the future legal ramifications their implementation might bring with it. And now, as predicted, a 32-page class action lawsuit has been filed in California claiming discrimination against disabled individuals amongst a host of many other grievances. Let's take a look at Disney's latest legal battle here on That Park Place. The new class action lawsuit has been filed by people aggrieved over the DAS situation. You'll note that here on That Park Place, we've been covering DAS, and, well, I think a lot of what we have been saying, Jonas, has wound up in this lawsuit. But there are some points that I didn't even think of or consider. Let's go ahead and get into it right now, and we can get some commentary from our amazing panelists right here. That Park Place by Marvin Montanaro, who might be with us, who knows. February 11, 2025, Disney hit with class action lawsuit over Disability Access Service, or DAS, policies that alleges mistreatment of disabled people at the theme parks. DAS, a system used to assist guests with disabilities at Disneyland and Walt Disney World. The DAS lawsuit, Malone versus Disney, was filed in Orange County, California, and alleges that Disney, along with its contract medical screening partner, Inspire Health Alliance, and we'll get back to that one, is engaging in discriminatory practices that violate multiple federal and state disability laws. Lawsuit alleges that Disney is violating the ADA and the Unruh Civil Rights Act. That's an interesting little caveat to this, because remember, I think we've talked about it here on That Park Place, referring to other lawsuits, and maybe referring to DAS as well, that the laws that protect Californians, it's a bit more strict than maybe your, say, federal laws, even with the ADA. So it was always, a risk to implement a policy such as this in the state of California, but they did. According to the complaint, Disney's new DAS policies unlawfully restrict access to the service by limiting eligibility to guests with developmental disabilities, such as autism. The plaintiffs argue that this revised policy discriminates against individuals with physical disabilities, violating the Americans with Disabilities Act, the California Unruh Civil Rights Act, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, and the California Confidentiality of Medical Information Act. Whew, that is a lot. One more thing I want to go ahead and bring up here before we hear from our amazing panelists is that, Jonas, do you remember this story?
Absolutely. With this one, there was a one-word change.
Right. A one-word change. That going from DAS is intended to accommodate only those guests with developmental disabilities to DAS is intended to accommodate those guests who, due to a development disability like autism or similar, are unable to wait in a conventional queue. Well, here's the interesting thing about this, Jonas. The lawsuit itself makes reference to that specific point over and over and over and over again, that the only verbiage used by Disney is severely restricts and limits who can actually be eligible for the DAS program. And they say that that violates multiple laws, and it's why they have the grievances that they do in this lawsuit.
Did Disney think
Go ahead.
By striking the only, that they were going to get away with this? I mean, you still, if it's a violation of the law, you still broke the law in the past. It's not like all of a sudden that you changed it and they're like, oh, it never happened. It's ridiculously dumb.
It somewhat makes it worse because now you basically have you basically told everybody, yeah, it was wrong to do that in the first place. Let's go ahead and change it up real fast. Of course, people, like you said, Marvin, have still been aggrieved by that policy having been on their TOS in the first place. They also talk about, and Jonas, I think we brought it up pretty early on, that you had to essentially buy your tickets and essentially fill
Right.
out a form that prohibited you from even bringing a lawsuit, even to be a part of the system for your interview process. Go ahead.
So if you're a disabled person, or if you're a person who considers yourself disabled, you would have to buy a ticket and a reservation, then do the interview process.
Mhm.
During that interview process, they would ask you a bunch of questions, and other people on this panel have confirmed with their sources that these interviews can sometimes last 45 minutes. And
Yep.
then at the end of it, they will tell you whether or not you qualify, or whether you should practice standing in line at home, or consider purchasing Genie Plus. Well, at the time, Genie Plus. Now it's Lightning Lane Multipass, which, by the way, is raising in price.
So a friend of mine who had to go through this process actually allowed me to stand in the room off camera so that I could witness this for myself. And my goodness, they grill you. They grill you. They try to trip you up. They look for any possible loophole to deny disabled people what they need in order to be able to enjoy the parks at the same level as someone who is able-bodied. It is absolutely vile what they do. They will not accept any kind of medical documentation. So if you have a letter from your doctor or your therapist or whatever that says that you need special accommodations, they will not take it. Which is the exact opposite of what Universal does. I mean, Universal is basically, if you have the documentation and you upload it to a third-party system, then you're in. You don't have to explain anything to Universal. You don't have to tell anyone at Universal anything.
I actually got to have a conversation with a Universal executive over the last week or so. And I asked him, how closely do you all watch what Disney's doing? And he laughed very hard and said, oh, we absolutely pay attention to what Disney gets wrong and what they roast Disney on social media. They are just over here handing everything to Universal right now.
What's amazing
absolutely.
is the IBCCES system that Universal uses, which we do detail in our article on that park place. You upload your information, your documentation, and they give you this digital card, and all you have to do is show the card at Universal, and it's no questions asked. And SeaWorld uses it too. It's Six Flags uses it all over the country. And for some reason, Disney decided that it did not want to use this because you know what? It might actually allow people to gain disability access. It's weird that Disney didn't care about this until it started charging for FastPass, right?
Yes, yes, indeed. And that's why they really did all this, right? Because they were monitoring the Lightning Lane usage and saying, hey, wait a minute, Lightning Lane usage is up, but our Lightning Lane sales are down. How could this be? And now we have to crack down on this system. And maybe, as this lawsuit alleges, maybe they did it, not all on the up and up here. It says right here on page 16 here, point 69, specifically Disney's terms and conditions for the DAS explicitly adopted this restrictive framework by expressly stating the disability access service is intended to accommodate only guests who, due to a developmental disability like autism or similar, are unable to wait in a conventional queue for an extended period of time. This language, which guests are required to agree to before initiating the DAS eligibility process, establishes a clear intent to exclude individuals with physical disabilities, regardless of how severe their conditions impair their ability to tolerate long waits. By enforcing this narrowly defined eligibility criteria, Disney systemically denied access to accommodations for physically disabled guests, reinforcing systemic discrimination. I will say, Jonas, we have talked about it at length here, right? We have seen people who don't fall within maybe the disability spectrum.
Right. So Disney's definition of disabled is different than the rest of the world's definition of disabled, which creates a problem when you call this the Disability Access Service, which is the same name as a previous service, that people are coming expecting one thing and they are leaving or staying, getting something else, or leaving distraught that they can't go through these lines. Disney would say that they have built accommodations for these people into the parks. I would say that most of the reports that we're getting from people who consider themselves disabled, I'm using soft language here, but this is a person in a wheelchair that we're talking about here, says that Disney has not quite done the things that they need to do, including, as we've seen in the new Haunted Mansion queue, there are things that were not built with guests in wheelchairs in mind. unless you have a helper, which is like, okay, well, that's not disability access. That is disability plus one access.
Yes. And they actually do bring up in this lawsuit with writer switch, for example, where it's like, well, wait a minute, how does that help me if I'm alone? How does that help me if I'm not with a group or with a small group? And there are issues relating to that. Also, too, remember the accommodation that Disney was seeking to provide to those who were denied the DAS system. Remember what they were saying? Oh, hey, you can buy this Lightning Lane product, and, well, that's just going to go ahead and take care of all your needs. When, in reality, no, it does not. First of all, it doesn't cover every single attraction. It also only covers every single attraction that it does cover once and one time only. So you're not getting the same level of access that everybody else who, if they decided to ride multiple times on one ride, is getting. And then two, you have to buy it every single day. So imagine this, culture. Imagine if you engaged in purchasing a magic key, right? And you wanted, over 300 days of access at the Disney parks. Well, what if you already budgeted that out, paid for a magic key, and now you're faced with the option of having to buy Lightning Lane every single day, and especially for those with you? I mean, that's a complete bait and switch right there.
It is,
as far as I'm looking at it.
Yeah, Disney kind of put itself in a bit of a predicament when they started to go this direction, especially the pay for play access that used to be free to everybody. Legacy Fast Pass was safe. You were never going to get in trouble for that. It was first come, first serve. And, if you are a family that didn't get up in the morning, well, likely you were going to be experiencing the parks in the evening anyway. Whereas, if you are an early riser, rope dropper, you are in good shape. You add into that the complexities of being there with a guest with disability, and you don't need to create additional barriers, which is what this program has done. It's also created that unfair financial barrier, especially to people who possess park passes, as you pointed out. So I think that I think ultimately, not only is this a slam dunk kind of a lawsuit, I think it may have Disney rethinking just whether or not trying to reach deeper into people's wallets is actually the best way to service their guests. Maybe it'll take a lawsuit to have them rethink the way that they approach this, because ultimately, as you pointed out, if you have a Magic Key pass for all access, you don't really if you don't have access to DAS.
Right. And the poor girl that was online, and this is a tweet that I've made that keeps getting brought up over and over again. The girl in the wheelchair who talks about how she was being told to buy Genie Plus for her and all of the people in her party in order to get the same level of accommodation that she had before. No, that makes Disney look like they're trying to price gouge people. Disney used to be so good at looking like they were bending over backwards for people. And I get it. There are people who qualify as disabled who don't want special handouts that shouldn't enter into any of this here. But there are small children who are not quite Make-A-Wish children that they should be allowed. We should give kids the world here. And by that, I mean Walt Disney World. If this were within my purview, we would cater more to this, and maybe we hack off the people who are abusing the system more than the people who need the system.
Back to the concept here of why they created the additional reach into your pocket in the first place, Jonas, is they stopped offering advantages to people who stayed on property. And they offered those to the good neighbor hotels. I put those in quotes because they're not fabulous, but there are some, but most of them are not. So if they just pull those services from all but maybe one or two of the more nice hotels in the area, I think that they could, raise revenue through their accommodations on property. And, then they wouldn't be leaning so far out to get their hands in your pockets. But there's a lot of ways for them to offer perceived value. And they don't do it anymore. And one of the best things that they used to have before they revamped it was the DAS program. Because while some people would abuse it, and I think we've all seen that before personally, for the most part, people were, honest about it. And the people that needed it for kids that can't wait in line. I know kids that can't wait in line. So why would we be so callous as to make them have to pay additional money? So, but you do tweet great things. So if you're not following Jonas on X, you should be. You should be.
I would make the argument that this was never about trying to stop the people that were abusing the system from using it. This was about trying to stop everyone from using it. This was about cutting out a lot of people that needed it because they saw an opportunity for dollar signs with the stupid Genie Plus. It was never about, people are abusing the system. There are ways, medical documentation submitted to a secure third party is a way that you could very easily get rid of people that are abusing the system. Universal did it. SeaWorld does it. Like I said, even Six Flags does it. Disney chose this route, and they do this. Look at the people that they say are supposed to be able to get it, like autistic people, people that are probably more socially awkward, people that probably are afraid of these high pressure one-on-one situations. I believe that they're intentionally trying to intimidate those people to the point where they won't even want to go into it. Because it is I watched this happen, guys. They grill you. It is an intimidating and intentionally intimidating process.
Very intimidating. And remember, one that was assisted by Inspire Health Alliance. Nurse practitioners is how they refer to them in the lawsuit. Here's what's interesting about that. The lawsuit alleges actually that because of the use of Inspire Health Alliance employees, that actually raises the standard by which Disney operates, because now they're essentially medical examiners in a way, which has its own series of laws on the books, not just state, but federally. So this is a big deal here, folks, and we've only scratched the surface on this lawsuit. There's so much more that we can get into, but we're going to have to do that on another live stream. So, hey, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe, where we talk about DAS, but also we have other huge stories that we have in the works here, folks, that you want to subscribe here for. Turn those bell notifications on in order to get notified when we do go live with some of these very, very big, impactful stories that you so desperately care about.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.